Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. The moment finally arrived. After months of speculation, leaked court documents, and mounting public pressure, Sean Jay-Z Carter stepped into the courtroom. Not as a mogul, not as an icon, but as a man defending himself against disturbing allegations, and as a defendant for Diddy. With Diddy's world unraveling, his freak-off parties now part of sworn testimonies, Jay-Z was dragged into the storm by association. His name was attached to rooms he denied entering, events he claimed never happened, and victims he insists he never met. But how would he defend himself in front of the jury, the media, and the culture? What would he say when the whole world was watching? This is the moment Jay-Z testified. The courtroom had just settled after a long morning of legal back and forths. The air was thick, almost viscous, with anticipation. The prosecution was preparing to reintroduce evidence linked to Cassie Ventura's harrowing testimony, a grim tapestry woven from hushed allegations now turning into sworn statements of abuse and exploitation. Diddy's lawyers shuffled papers, a mix of high-priced polish and forced indifference, their confidence perhaps a carefully constructed facade. Cassie Ventura herself was there, seated near the prosecution table, her face a mask of weary resolve, her presence a silent accusation. That's when the doors opened, not quietly, not with warning, but deliberately. The heavy double doors at the back of the chamber, solid oak and seemingly impenetrable, swung inward. No fanfare, no pre-announced entry, no publicist's staged moment. Just a measured stride, purposeful and unhesitant. Sean Carter, draped in a midnight navy suit, tailored so sharply it might as well have been forged armor, stepped into the room. He didn't look left. He didn't nod. No entourage, no Beyoncé, no Rock Nation team, just him, a solitary figure, a living legend, stepping into a courtroom that hadn't expected to see him. Not like this, not on the witness list, not under oath. Gasps filled the room, a collective intake of breath that rippled through the gallery. One seasoned journalist dropped her pen, the soft click echoing in the sudden silence. Cassie Ventura leaned infinitesimally closer to her attorney, a whisper of a shared thought. Even the honorable judge presiding, usually unflappable, allowed a fractional raise of a single perfectly sculpted brow. Diddy, stoic and defiant until this moment, slowly turned toward the entrance. His usual swagger was replaced by a rigid stillness. His eyes, typically glinting with defiance, locked onto Jay-Z, unblinking, as if watching a ghost he'd buried 20 years ago rise, unbidden, from the very dirt he thought he'd covered. This wasn't planned, not by the press, not by the public. Jay-Z had requested a sealed session for his statement, his testimony shrouded in the kind of secrecy usually reserved for national security. But the court overruled it. Transparency, that was the ruling. The public's right to know, it seemed, outweighed the mogul's desire for discretion, and now, the architect of a billion-dollar empire, a man who had mastered the art of perception, was about to give the performance of his life. Not with lyrics, not with rhythm, but with memory, with truth, or at least his truth. Under the unblinking gaze of justice, he took the stand, his steps devoid of the usual swagger that marked his presence on stage or in boardrooms. This was a different stage. He reached the witness stand, adjusted the microphone, and then, with a quiet solemnity that felt profoundly out of place, for a man of his public persona, he swore his oath. The promise felt heavier here, the weight of an entire industry resting on its utterance. The courtroom, packed with federal prosecutors, cynical entertainment journalists, and high-powered attorneys who once negotiated million-dollar deals at brunch tables, leaned forward like they were listening to the first forbidden verse of a track they weren't supposed to hear. His voice, calm, controlled, but tight, like a rope pulled in both directions. It was deeper than anticipated, carrying a resonant weight. "I want to make it clear," he began, his gaze steady, a subtle tremor in his jaw visible. "I came here because silence ain't an option no more." And with that sentence, everything changed. Because when Sean Carter speaks, not the mogul, not the rapper, not the billionaire businessman, but the man behind it all, it's not just a testimony, it's a reckoning. The atmosphere in the courtroom transformed. This wasn't merely a celebrity being dragged into another scandal, defending his brand. He didn't waste time. He didn't come with denial as his opening weapon, a tactic of the cornered. He came with context. And in this particular drama, laden with accusations of grotesque exploitation and systemic abuse, context was even more dangerous than outright refutation. "Yes, I was invited to Diddy's events. Yes, I attended," he said, slightly slower, more deliberate, choosing each word with the precision of a master lyricist crafting a verse. "But let me be unequivocally clear. What I saw and what I was told were two profoundly different realities." His own lawyers, led by the formidable Alex Spiro, sat stiff, a collective tension radiating from their table, perhaps unnerved by their client's chosen opening gambit. The defense looked confused, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. Was this helping them? Was he flipping? The answer would come slowly, piece by piece, as Jay-Z told the court something nobody expected. "I saw the setups, the NDAS, the confiscated phones, the back rooms with curtains, private entrances, discreet exits, but a machinery of control designed to operate in the shadows, even in plain sight." He paused, a deep breath held, a subtle shift in his posture, a slight lean forward, as if confessing a heavy burden. A bead of sweat, almost imperceptible, formed at his temple. "I never went in those rooms. I never signed those papers, but I knew." His voice dropped almost to a whisper, but the microphone caught it clearly, amplifying the raw admission. "I knew something wasn't right." That sentence broke the courtroom wide open, because it wasn't just an admittance of being present. It was an admittance of witnessing the mechanics of the machine Diddy allegedly built. The same machinery that Cassie, Dawn, Richard, and others had described in excruciating, harrowing detail. The alleged coercion, the abuse, the freak-offs that were, by their accounts, not parties, but carefully orchestrated exploitations. Jay-Z had pulled back the curtain, not on his own participation, but on his awareness. Jay-Z turned toward the jury, his gaze sweeping across them, almost as if confiding directly. "You see, in this industry, there are parties, and then there are parties. And the ones I was at, the ones I started walking away from, those weren't parties anymore. They were systems, designed experiences, the kind that aren't about fun. They're about power, controlled, about making people feel indebted." The prosecution, Ms. Anya Sharma, sharp and incisive, cut through the heavy air. "Did you ever witness anything criminal, Mr. Carter? Anything that would constitute a violation of federal law under the RICO statute as described by Ms. Ventura and other complainants?" Jay-Z hesitated. A beat of silence. A breath held. His poker face, usually impenetrable, flickered. Number not directly. But I saw enough to know I shouldn't be there, enough to make my gut clench, enough to make me call my driver and leave. He then described one event in 2015, a party in Miami, supposedly for Christian Combs's birthday, where he says things got strange. They had masks, he said, his voice lowered, almost confiding, painting the scene with stark details. Like real masks, opaque, concealing, like everyone was hiding. One man walked past me in leather with nothing but high heels on. People laughed. I didn't because I knew that man looked scared. I saw a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. It was a carnival, yes, but it felt like a trap. Jay-Z said he left early that night. He said he called a driver and didn't wait for the scheduled car service because, as he put it, I didn't want my name attached to whatever that was. He wanted a quiet severance from whatever grotesque spectacle was unfolding behind those masked faces. Then the prosecution dropped the photo. A leaked image, blurry but authenticated, flashed on the large courtroom screen. It showed Jay-Z, Diddy, LeBron James, and Beyoncé in a room with a man in a latex mask kneeling on a velvet pillow. The image was disturbing in its ambiguity. "Mr. Carter, do you recognize this image?" Prosecutor Sharma asked. "Can you confirm your presence and that of your wife in this photograph?" Jay-Z looked at it in silence, a long, deliberate silence, his eyes fixed on the image, then on Diddy, then back to the image. His jaw tightened, a single muscle twitching. "I saw that moment," he finally said, his voice controlled but with a subtle tremor. "I was there for a short time. I was told it was performance art, a creative expression. I didn't laugh. I didn't stay." He looked directly at Diddy, his voice low, cutting through the sudden tension. "You, Mr. Combs, knew people trusted you. You knew the power of your invitation. You used that, and you exploited it." For the first time, Diddy's jaw dropped. His usual stoicism cracked. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, perhaps a moment of raw, unmasked vulnerability, crossed his face before he quickly regained his composure, though with less conviction than before. Then came the part that turned Jay-Z's testimony from damage control to destruction. He told the court about a private conversation he had with Diddy in late 2018, just after whispers of investigations started circulating in the industry, a subtle tremor in the industry's bedrock. "He called me," Jay-Z recounted, his voice cracking slightly, a genuine raw display of emotion that cut through his controlled delivery. It was a jarring human moment. Said he wanted to get ahead of something, said it was getting loud. He told me, "They're coming for me, Jay. You gotta be careful who you stand next to. You're too clean for this." Jay-Z swallowed hard, his gaze distant, lost in memory. I asked Diddy point blank. I looked him in the eye and said, "Did you do anything I can't come back from? Anything that will burn the whole house down?" Jay-Z paused. Another swallow. It is a deep breath, as if steeling himself. And Diddy allegedly responded, "It's just parties, Jay. Just experiences. Nobody gets hurt unless they want to." Jay's voice cracked slightly. That was the last real conversation we had. The silence that followed in the courtroom was deafening, broken only by the frantic scratching of reporters' pens. Jay-Z had presented not just a detail, but a harrowing window into the alleged inner workings of Diddy's world, and crucially, into his own moral line. It was an admission of a breaking point. "I stopped answering his calls after that," he said, his eyes scanning the jury, a subtle plea for understanding in his gaze. "Distanced myself. It wasn't a public announcement. It was a slow, deliberate fade. I skipped revolt events, pulling out of collaborations, even instructing Rock Nation reps to keep our brand away from whatever Puffs got going. No shared appearances, no joint ventures, just distance. Then the prosecution revealed something else. On the large courtroom screen, an email exchange appeared, dated early 2020. It was between Jay-Z's legal counsel and an anonymous party, warning that NDAs from past events might be weaponized against those who were merely present, even if not directly involved in alleged illicit activities. Jay nodded, a touch of weary resignation, but also resolve. I knew what that meant. They were going to use silence as a shield, use the fear of legal repercussions to keep people quiet, and I wasn't about to get caught behind it. Not anymore. He finished the third part of his testimony with a sentence that made headlines before the court even recessed, a powerful, resonating statement that seemed to fill the entire chamber. "He used to be my brother," Jay-Z stated, his voice gaining strength. "But now I see who he really was and who I almost became by standing too close, by allowing myself to be blind to the shadows." The room was silent. The courtroom erupted in hushed murmurs, a ripple of astonishment passing through the assembled press. Headlines were already being written in the minds of every reporter present, each phrase a hammer blow to Diddy's crumbling legacy. The fallout, Jay-Z knew, was only just beginning. As Jay-Z sat forward in the witness chair, his hands folded, his shoulders slightly slumped, his voice, while still strong but undeniably emotional. The controlled power of his demeanor softened, revealing a raw, human vulnerability. The courtroom had already been rattled by the allegations and rumors circling the trial. But now the weight shifted. Jay-Z wasn't just here as a celebrity being dragged into another scandal. He was a husband, a father, and a man defending everything he had built. The room was silent. Jurors leaned in, their previous unreadable expressions now tinged with something akin to empathy. Reporters stopped typing, their fingers hovering over keyboards. Even Diddy, who had been scribbling notes on his legal pad for most of the morning, looked up, his head snapping up, his gaze suddenly fixed on Jay-Z. "I need to speak about my family," he began, looking directly at the jury, his voice clear, tinged with a father's pain. "Because when my name gets dragged, so does theirs, my wife, my children." "Blue Ivy's old enough to read headlines now," he said. "She came to me last week, tears in her eyes, asking what a freak-off was, asking why our name was connected to such ugliness. That's not something a father should have to explain to his daughter. Not about his own life." He described how after the initial lawsuit named him, reporters swarmed outside their home in Bel Air. Paparazzi, like vultures, camped outside Blue's school, their long lenses violating childhood innocence. Headlines blurred fact and fiction, turning his life into a relentless tabloid war zone. He continued, "My wife, Beyoncé, has stood by me through everything, through industry battles, through business risks, through triumphs and setbacks. But this was different. This wasn't business drama or career competition. This was a nuclear bomb, a biological attack, dropped on our family. And the worst part, it was all based on a lie, a calculated, malicious falsehood." He then turned to the specific claim that he and Beyoncé attended the alleged Miami freak-off in 2015. Jay-Z reached into a slim black folder on the stand. He pulled out flight records, hotel receipts, photographs, video timestamps. He held them up, not with aggression, but with quiet, irrefutable authority. "On the night in question, we were in Paris," he said, his voice calm, factual, every word cutting through the previous emotion with the weight of evidence. It was our anniversary. We stayed at Hotel Plaza One. I've included the hotel receipt, photographs, video timestamps, and multiple eyewitness accounts. We weren't there. We were a continent away, celebrating our love. The prosecution reviewed the material, their expressions shifting from skepticism to grudging acceptance. The judge herself asked the clerk to confirm the dates, cross-referencing with official records. Everything checked out. Jay-Z had receipts, literally. But he didn't stop there. He leaned into the broader implications, calling out the pervasive, corrosive culture of clickbait and unverified gossip that had allowed these insidious rumors to thrive, to fester, to infect public perception. "When did we stop demanding proof?" he asked the room, his voice rising slightly, a passionate plea cutting through the legal formalism. When did accusation become conviction? When did a single unverified tweet, a whispered rumor, carry more weight than decades of building an honest legacy? He emphasized that his reputation wasn't just his own. It was tied to his wife's, his children's, his entire legacy. "I've spent decades building something clean, something that lifts our community, that empowers artists, that creates generational wealth, and in a single headline that gets smeared with no evidence, with the ugliest accusations imaginable." Beyoncé was mentioned several times, but Jay-Z was careful. He didn't lean on her fame or status. He spoke of her as a mother, a woman blindsided by allegations she had no part in, a partner whose unwavering support had been tested to its limits. "I came here to defend truth," he said, his voice filled with conviction, "and to make sure no one, not even a billionaire mogul, gets away with burying people in lies, with building an empire on the ruins of others' reputations." Jay-Z's composure never cracked, but his voice took on a sharper edge as he addressed the next major claim, the infamous Miami party hosted at Gloria and Emilio Estefan's mansion, where he was allegedly seen by multiple witnesses during Diddy's alleged freak-off event. This specific rumor had circulated widely, weaving itself into the broader narrative of Diddy's alleged illicit activities. "I want to be very clear for the record," Jay-Z began, his voice cold, precise, stripping away all emotion. "I have never in my entire life attended a party at Gloria Estefan's house, not in Miami, not anywhere. The claim is a complete fabrication." He unfolded several documents, a meticulously detailed timeline of his activities from that exact week, supported by security detail logs, private transportation manifests, and charity event programs. He walked the court through every hour of the date in question, leaving no room for ambiguity. "On the night of the alleged party," he said, "I was in Los Angeles. I was attending a charity dinner hosted by the Sean Carter Foundation at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Here's my speech transcript. Here's the guest list. Here's a photograph with the mayor." The evidence was irrefutable. The court clerk displayed a screen showing the security log of the museum, which captured Jay-Z's entrance and exit down to the minute. But the part that hit hardest wasn't the proof. It was the breakdown of how these rumors got started. Jay-Z called out the vague phrasing in lawsuits and the power of innuendo. "You don't need a lie to be loud," he said, his voice laced with a bitter frustration. "You just need it to be repeated over and over until it becomes truth in the echo chamber of social media." He explained that his name had been attached to these rumors not because of any witness, but because of a pattern of him attending Diddy's events in the past. "That's what this has come to. I once went to a brunch, a public industry event, so now I'm complicit in everything this man's accused of. They printed that I was seen in a place I've never been. And that one sentence turned into dozens of articles, thousands of tweets, and irreparable damage. Jay-Z's team submitted a forensic report showing how many news outlets had repeated the same false claim. Not one reached out for comment. Not one tried to verify. As the judge acknowledged the validity of the records, Jay-Z looked toward the prosecution and said plainly, his voice cutting through the quiet, "If you're going to drag a man into a trial this big, you better have more than gossip and guesses. You better have facts." The final stretch of Jay-Z's testimony took a darker, surreal turn as he addressed the ocean of conspiracy theories that had swirled since Diddy's downfall began. It was a descent into the digital abyss, where truth was a casualty and every connection, however tenuous, was woven into a grand, malevolent design. He shook his head, a gesture of weary disbelief, glanced at the jury and said, "I've been called a lot of things in this industry, but Illuminati puppet, master manipulator, murderer by association, that's a new one. Even for me." He acknowledged the internet frenzy, how TikTok accounts with millions of followers had posted deep dives connecting him to everyone, from Harvey Weinstein to R. Kelly to Jeffrey Epstein. They claimed he was part of a secret cabal, orchestrating events behind the scenes. They say, "Where there's smoke, there's fire," he said. But sometimes the smoke is just fog machines and YouTube edits. It's fear-mongering. It's entertainment for the morally bankrupt. Jay-Z then took out a printed Reddit thread, one with thousands of upvotes, speculating wildly about his supposed inner circle with Beyoncé and Diddy, complete with poorly photoshopped images and red string connections. He held it up, a physical manifestation of the digital madness. "This is what passes for journalism now," he said, "for truth. This is what my children see when they go online." Jay-Z explained how the theories had begun affecting real people. "I've had family members get followed, business partners backing out of deals, fearing association with a narrative that has no basis in reality. Even death threats delivered to my home, because someone on the internet connected dots that don't exist. They connect dots that are purely imaginary." But then he did something unexpected. He admitted that silence may have made it worse. "I didn't speak up sooner because I thought the truth would be obvious. I thought logic would prevail. But maybe I underestimated how fast lies travel when they come with good production value and ominous music, when they tap into pre-existing biases and anxieties." He ended his statement by saying, "I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to listen, to think, to demand proof, to question. Because if we don't draw the line here today, then none of us are safe from what comes next. None of us." Jay-Z sat back, his testimony complete. In a courtroom where whispers had become headlines, his voice had just redrawn the battle lines, not just for himself, but for the very concept of verifiable truth in the digital age. As Jay-Z finished his direct testimony and the room settled into a tense hush, the lead prosecutor stood, Ms. Anya Sharma. Her name had been whispered for days in the press corps, an aggressive federal litigator known for shaking even the most polished, impenetrable celebrities on the stand. She adjusted her glasses, a glint of strategic intent in her eyes, and looked straight at Jay-Z, who remained poised but visibly alert, the subtle tension in his shoulders betraying his readiness for the impending assault. "Mr. Carter," the prosecutor began, her voice sharp and incisive, cutting through the heavy air that Jay-Z's testimony had created. "You say you were never at Gloria Estefan's house. You've provided logs, photos, timestamps. That's all compelling." Jay-Z nodded slowly, a single, deliberate movement. Because it's the truth, Ms. Sharma. But, the prosecutor continued, pacing slightly, a predatory grace to her movements, you have, by your own admission, attended Diddy-hosted events in the past, high-profile ones, brunches, fundraisers, award parties, correct? Yes, Jay-Z said carefully. Public events, industry events, nothing like what's being described here, Ms. Sharma. Nothing like the allegations against Mr. Combs. The prosecutor paused, then leaned in, her voice dropping, taking on a conspiratorial edge. Did you ever witness anything inappropriate at any of those events? Any behavior that made you uncomfortable, especially concerning Ms. Ventura? You saw no coercion, no distress? Jay-Z's jaw tightened. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker of defiance crossed his face. He considered his words with immense care. Cassie was often present. She was Diddy's partner, his artist, but I never saw her in distress that was visible to me, and I certainly never saw the things she's described in her testimony. Had I seen any signs of abuse or coercion, I would have intervened. My character, my conscience, would demand it. The prosecutor shifted gears, a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. So when you hear now what she's claimed about coercion, about abuse, about the so-called freak-offs, you're saying you're completely blindsided, that you, Sean Carter, a man renowned for his astute observations of human nature and the underbelly of the industry, saw nothing amiss. I'm saying I didn't see it, Jay-Z replied firmly, his voice regaining its steel edge. And if I had, I wouldn't have stayed quiet. I wouldn't be here today. The prosecutor nodded. That's what Russell Simmons said too, Mr. Carter. The room gasped. Jay-Z blinked, his poker face breaking for a half-second, a raw flash of surprise, almost anger, crossing his features. Objection! Jay-Z's attorney, Alex Spiro, shot to his feet, a guttural sound echoing through the court. The judge sustained it, but the implication, the lingering shadow of another fallen mogul, lingered in the air, undeniable. The prosecutor continued, pushing the idea that Jay-Z's proximity to Diddy gave him access to more than just music industry clout. She floated the possibility that Jay-Z knew more than he was admitting, but without direct evidence, it was all strategy, a calculated manipulation of doubt. The jury watched, some skeptical, their arms still crossed, others perhaps more sympathetic, their expressions softened by Jay-Z's earlier emotional testimony. Jay-Z's final response before stepping down cut through the tension. I'm not here to protect Diddy. I'm here to protect my name, my family, my legacy. And if I was truly part of that world, if I even suspected the depth of what's been described in this courtroom, if I had any complicity in it, I wouldn't be testifying. I'd be on trial myself. As Jay-Z stepped down from the witness stand, he adjusted his suit jacket, briefly glancing toward the gallery where Beyoncé was not seated. But her absence felt present in every stare, a calculated decision that spoke volumes. He exited through the side door, escorted by silent, imposing security. But the courtroom remained buzzing, murmurs, headshakes, and gasps, some in disbelief at his testimony, others in quiet vindication. Reporters in the gallery exchanged frantic texts and notes. Social media was already erupting, algorithms churning, headlines flashed. Jay-Z breaks silence under oath. Jay-Z versus prosecution. Jay-Z defends Beyoncé and family from Diddy ties. There was no waiting for a verdict. The internet had already rendered one 1,000 times over, in its infinite fractured echo chambers. But inside the room, something more complicated was unfolding. The jury remained unreadable. Juror 4, a middle-aged black woman in a beige pantsuit, scribbled steadily in her notepad, her pen a steady rhythmic scratch against the paper, her thoughts carefully guarded. Juror 9, a young man with a military haircut, stared at the empty witness chair long after Jay-Z had left it, his brow furrowed in deep contemplation, and the alternate juror, he bit his pen cap in silence, eyebrows furrowed, wrestling with the complexities of the testimony. One spectator, a former bad boy intern, was caught by the sketch artist, wiping tears from her eyes. She told a reporter during recess, her voice raw. He talked like he didn't know, but we saw him at those events. Maybe he didn't see what we saw, or maybe he just looked away. Cassie Ventura remained stone-faced, seated at her attorney's table. She didn't react overtly during Jay-Z's testimony, but when his voice cracked, mentioning Blue Ivy, she briefly looked up, not with empathy, more like a question. Was he protecting his family or protecting himself? Even Diddy, stoic throughout much of the trial, showed subtle signs of twitching agitation. He tapped his pen faster. His eyes scanned the room, a frantic search for reassurance. Jay-Z's denials had hit him too. Not as a betrayal, perhaps, but as a signal. The ship was sinking, and everyone was trying to find a lifeboat. The judge called a short recess, and as the room emptied into the hallway, voices clashed. Some were Team Jay-Z. He showed receipts. He came clean. What more do you want? Others weren't buying it. He's just saving face. He's been part of the system forever. You don't just not see things. And in the middle stood the messy, elusive truth. Nobody really knew, but everybody had an opinion, loudly expressed. Back at Rock Nation headquarters, the mood was tense. Jay-Z's team had released no official statement post-testimony, preferring to let the narrative unfold organically, or perhaps to gauge the public's reaction. His attorney, Alex Spiro, offered only a brief quote outside the courthouse. Mr. Carter testified truthfully and courageously. We stand by his integrity. The evidence speaks for itself. But the world wasn't waiting for legal summaries. Within 12 hours, every major outlet from TMZ to the New York Times had dissected his testimony. Some praised his transparency. Others called it calculated damage control. Beyoncé's name trended globally for 36 hours straight. Her publicist declined to comment, maintaining a dignified silence in the face of the storm. Fans were divided, some fiercely defending her, others questioning how deep the couple's connection to Diddy really went. Meanwhile, the prosecution was regrouping. Jay-Z hadn't shattered their case, but he had complicated it. He had humanized himself, distanced his family, and redirected the spotlight. But in doing so, he raised another issue. The industry's pattern of plausible deniability, of looking away, of allowing powerful figures to operate in a moral gray zone. The DA's office released a quiet statement. While Mr. Carter's testimony was significant, our investigation remains ongoing and extends beyond any one individual. Translation: this isn't over, not by a long shot. And then came the wild card, 50 Cent. Never one to stay quiet or to miss an opportunity to stir the pot. He posted a photo of Jay-Z on the stand with the caption, "Nice performance, but we ain't forgot them brunches, my guy." It went viral instantly, fueling the skepticism, solidifying the cynicism for many. In the days that followed, other celebrities began to reappear, subtly. Alicia Keys reposted a quote about truth cutting through silence. Questlove tweeted cryptic emojis. Even Oprah posted a vague story about building from ashes, a nod to the underlying turmoil. Jay-Z's reputation had taken a hit, a bruising encounter with public judgment. but it hadn't collapsed. His testimony, for better or worse, marked a moment where silence was no longer an option, where the unspoken rules of an industry were finally being dragged into the harsh light of a federal courtroom. And in a case full of twists, one truth was clear. The courtroom wasn't just trying Diddy. It was trying an entire era of power, proximity, and protection. Jay-Z had survived the stand, but the real trial, the trial of legacy, was just beginning. And its verdict, in the court of public opinion, remained painfully, compellingly unwritten.